Are you somebody who feels disempowered by their relationship with food? Are you somebody who's constantly trying to eat healthy, whether it's with smoothies and raw diets and salads, yet you still feel heavy and low? Well, this episode might just be for you. I talk about the whispers of the energy of your food. I go over what I've learned by studying Chinese medicine food therapy through the lens of Yin and Yang theory, as well as the 5 elements, and how you can use these theories to align your body and heal yourself and just find overall balance. And then I talk about how I've healed my relationship with food. I was somebody who, like pizza, before I'd eat it, I'd panic. After I eat it, I felt terrible mentally and physically. And I'm in Italy right now, and you better believe I'm eating all the pizza and I'm loving every second of it. I also go over a very special vision that I experienced when I was in Costa Rica last summer, where Spirit showed me how I was hurting my relationship with food energetically and how I could energetically raise the vibration of my food. If you are someone who's new to the show, welcome. If you're someone who's returned every week, welcome back. I am so grateful that you're all listening, and if you could do me the favor and leave me a rating or a review and share with a friend, that would mean so much to me and really help the show grow. All right, let's listen on in. You are listening to the School of Whispers podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie, and this is my space to get real, open, and weird about my life experiences as a psychic, medium, energy healer, and student of Chinese medicine. On the show, I'll be sharing my healing journey and the concepts I've learned along the way, and I'll be having guests on talking about the same sort of thing. I am so happy you're here, and I hope this show leaves you feeling inspired and empowered to learn how to listen to the whispers of your own body and spirit. Let's get into the show. Hi, welcome. I hope you're doing well. I'm really excited to share this topic with you because I'm so passionate about food therapy. My relationship with food has been such an integral part of my spirituality and just kind of progression as a human. So there's so many balls up in the air how I want to do this. I think I want to begin with Chinese medicine food therapy, starting with the Yin and Yang theory and then moving into the 5-element theory, because that's kind of the lens that I view food nutrition and how I decide what to put in my body and when. And then I'm going to, I'll start to talk about my journey with food. And I wrote a blog post last summer about the lessons that I've learned on how our energy can raise or corrupt the vibration of our food. And I was just rereading kind of the vision that I experienced when I was in Costa Rica last summer that really catalyzed this massive shift for me, and it's so good. So I really hope I make time for all of this. And yeah, if you want, I suggest that you maybe, if you're really into this, maybe you pull out a notepad and grab a pen and take some notes. All right. We shall begin with Chinese medicine food therapy. And really, this could have a lot more detail than what I will give. I took a whole semester-long course on food therapy, and so I'm going to go a little bit more than scratching the surface. But I want you to know that there is more. There is always more to learn, and I always recommend you do your own research. Quick disclaimer, I'm not a nutritionist. I am not a licensed doctor yet in Chinese medicine. So, use your discretion. You're intelligent. You know how to think for yourself, but I do believe that my perspective, I just want to share it. I know that it can help somebody. And because our Western society we have health food, we have had health food so wrong. We still have it so wrong. Like salads, smoothies, all of that. No. I'm going to tell you right now, I might trigger you, especially if you really love your food as well and your nutrition. The things I have to say are going to just be a complete 180 from everything you might think you know if you don't know much about Chinese medicine yet, because when I learned this, it really flipped me on my head and had me look at everything from a new perspective. But it's all been for the best. So I do hope that this will help you as well. All right, let's start with yin and yang. So the whole goal and the whole kind of the base line of where we want to return to when it comes to Chinese medicine is balancing our yin and our yang. You might hear yang more often in the West, but in school, if we said yang, our Chinese professor, Dr. Chang, she was like, what is yang? What is yang? No. You say yang. So that's how I'm going to say it, because that's how I was brutally bullied into saying. No, kidding. Dr. Chang's awesome. All right. So let's talk a little bit about yin energy. If you look up yin and yang, you're going to find that swirling ball, and the yin side is the dark side, but notice that it does have a little ball of white within the yin, because yin and yang, they coexist together. Actually, kind of their properties, their qualities is one cannot exist without the other, and two, they are constantly opposing each other. 3, what's really interesting is if one is out of balance, it will consume the other. So it's interesting. While one needs the other, balance is so key, because if there is this shift in the balance, it's almost like they'll eat each other in a way. They'll consume each other. So with the yin energy, we have the energy of cooling and nutritive substances. You can think of Mother Earth energy or divine feminine energy, the moon. But in terms of kind of more food, it's kind of more liquids and things that slow you down, food can race up your mind or slow down your mind. It's not just your physical body. It could also be your energy. That's kind of what the mind is a lot of energy. So it has this nature of coagulating. Instead of that expansion, it's more this drawing inward and slowing things down and cooling. On the other hand, we have our yang energy, which you could think of as the sun or that divine masculine. But also in Chinese medicine, it kind of represents the spirit. I know that I used to kind of associate yin more with like introspective and spirituality, but they're both spiritual concepts. But yang energy is more of that quality that we can't really see. Kind of, I think of a hot air balloon, the fire that becomes just hot air that raises the balloon up. That is the energy of the yang, and the basket that keeps the balloon from flying off into the abyss is the yin energy that keeps it anchored. So the yang is just constantly moving, it's warming, it's expanding, and it brings energy out. And so, like I mentioned, the goal is balance, but we are all born with a different set of balance. Typically, women, they need more of this yin energy in order to maintain balance, and men, on the other hand, they thrive more with the yang energy. But, with this modern age kind of moving out of, I don't know what the age, was it the age of Leo before the age of Aquarius? And Leo, fire, masculine energy. So now we're in this age of Aquarius. So our souls are being born with a little bit less of that intense masculine energy. It's kind of like this new generation's coming in with a little bit more of that balance of masculine and feminine. And I'm saying that just because you're a woman, it doesn't mean that the whole goal is yin energy. It's just really different for all of us. So now that I've covered the yin and yang, I'm going to talk a little bit about the medicinal temperatures of food that we need to consider. So there are 5 different temperatures that food can take on. And I'm not talking about the temperature of what you touch, although it does kind of have to do with that. I'm talking more about its energetic nature. So the 5 temperatures are cold, cool, neutral, warm, and hot. So cold and cool, as you can imagine, it's more of that yin energy. So this brings about benefits of calming the blood circulation, kind of possibly lowering blood pressure, clearing out toxins, removing heat, and it lowers your body's activity when it's in overdrive. Kind of just a general baseline example of cold and cool foods are raw foods and vegetables. A raw vegan diet is essentially a more cold natured, energetic diet. Kind of the dark side of it, though, is we have our spleen and stomach, which are the center in Chinese medicine of digestion. And the spleen, I think in Western medicine, you can kind of attribute it more to the pancreas and sort of its role with insulin and blood sugar and just the blood in general. But with the spleen and stomach, they thrive on more of a warmer environment. They can handle, especially if you're in a state of excess yang in your body, which is too much of that fiery energy. So I'm going to take a moment and just say we can have a state of excess yang, excess heat in the body, as well as excess yin in the body, excess cold. And we could also have deficiencies of both states. But because that gets a little complicated, I will include charts for that as well as the 5 elements in the show notes. But just to give you a general idea, there's excess and deficiency. Deficiency is kind of like low energy, feeling like having an issue digesting things, kind of chronically ill person, while excess is kind of that person who might be louder, more of that, they get overheated easily, maybe take on weight, like get a little bit more overweight or have an excessive appetite versus a deficient appetite. So there is a time and place for these raw food diets. For example, if you want to heal an excess heat and you need to slow things down and cool them down, you can go on a raw food cleanse to, and I'm being very general when I say excess condition. There are so many different subcategories of that, but you can do that sort of diet to bring your body back into balance. I was really suffering from excess condition symptoms, excess due to deficiency, but that's a whole other tangent. But I went vegan for a while, and I felt really good being vegan, and for about the first 4 or 5 months. And then kind of the last 4 to 5 months of being vegan, I started to feel really deficient and really weak, and also having a hard time digesting. After I would eat, especially raw foods, cold natured foods, I would feel like a sharp pang and almost like a slowing down of everything. And I would feel really tired and I'd be really bloated. Those are kind of your typical signs of cold foods injuring the spleen and stomach. And because that cold energy has that coagulation, that contraction effect. So that's kind of like the dark side of eating only cold and cool natured foods. And I think that what I'm going to be doing a lot here is driving it back home to this yin and yang theory of balance. The goal is balance here. The goal is not to take on some sort of moral high ground with your food or some sort of identity. The goal is to honor the energies within and to be intuitive and know what's going on and to act accordingly. We aren't meant to to hold an identity with our food. You aren't, just because you decide to eat vegan food, you are not a vegan. You are somebody who is eating vegan food. And even then, it takes a while for your whole body to adjust to what it means to be quote unquote a vegan. But I truly just believe that, I mean, I've been there. This is why I'm talking about it, because I've tried. I've been vegetarian. I've been vegan. I've been all these different diets in an attempt to heal myself. And what I've come to learn is there is no one way. The way is to listen and adjust and to honor. So a couple of examples of cold or cool natured foods would be, as I mentioned, fruits, apple, watermelon, banana. Avocado is a really great cooling natured food that I love. Some vegetables would be like lettuce, cucumber, spinach, some grains that are cooling in nature that I really have found so helpful are Job's tears, which or pearls, I mean barley pearls or something. I don't know the other name for it, but Job's tears are awesome. Barley and millet. Oh, I love millet. If you have a damp heat condition, millet is amazing. And I know you're probably like, what does damp heat mean? Like, what is she saying? Maybe look it up. Organic Olivia, she's a great resource. She's an herbalist who really loves Chinese medicine, so she talks a lot about dampness. Dairy could also be cold-natured or cooling in natured, such as yogurt or some forms of cheese. Mint is cooling, but I was doing a candida diet, which is a major detox for the body on mold, and I was also trying to shift a chronic damp heat pattern in the body. Dampness is just kind of this sensation of heaviness, like when the sun, like think about being outside in Florida in the summer. You feel like you breathe in and you feel that moisture, and it kind of muzzies up your head, and you feel a little bit heavy and your thoughts aren't as clear. So I was struggling with damp heat, which I'm not going to really get into what my symptoms were, but I was having a lot of sauces. One of the best sauces that I love that is slightly like a gentle detox and cooling in nature is I make an avocado sauce with spinach. So I blend the two up with bone broth, because bone broth it's yin natured. I would say bone broth, chicken bone broth is more neutral in temperature. But I would have that with some parsley and some mint, maybe some cilantro, because cilantro has a detoxifying effect. And I would mix it with a little dash of vinegar. And I would put it on my eggs, and I kind of just cut out all spices during this time. I really focused on herbs. All right, so neutral foods, their effect is more of this neutralizing effect, whether you have excess cold, excess hot, deficient heat, excess heat, that is going to be, it's a nice tonifier, it's a nice strengthener, kind of brings you back to center. A neutral food is chicken. Chicken feet are also extremely neutralizing and tonifying. What else? Here in my notes, I have grapes as a fruit. Grapes are neutralizing. Potatoes, turnip, almonds, black sesame, and honey, and saffron. Interesting. Saffron is, in my notes, is neutralizing. And again, I always recommend you fact check me, because this is me just having a whole list of things in front of me. So then we have our warming foods. I find warming foods, again, to be very tonifying and strengthening for the body. They're so great for the gut because this is how, I'm going to get off on a little tangent here. I listened to this wonderful TED Talk about the development of humans from apes. And a lot of this intelligence that we carry, this ability to think complex thoughts, is due to the addition of fire to our diet. Ape, for example, they spend so much of their day eating raw foods and digesting. Whereas humans discover fire, then all of a sudden we don't have to be spending so much time digesting foods. The fire kind of pre-digests the food for you so that your internal digestive system doesn't have to work so hard to maintain balance. Oh, it was years ago that I listened to it, but it's amazing. It's really incredible what adding heat to your food can do for you. So some warming foods would be like fermented foods. Yeah, I mean, we're already kind of far into this. I can't believe time is just flying. So I'm going to move it ahead a little bit. We also have hot natured foods. So hot foods are like your spices, like chili, paprika. Yeah, you get the gist. And that kind of moves energy up. Cold foods moves energy down or inwards. Hot natured brings energy up and out. And it can help with detoxing, but we got to be a little bit careful, especially on these extreme ends of temperatures, the hot and the cold. We do have to be careful. And what I really work on is on my plate, I take into account the energetic nature of all of my foods so that I'm either helping myself find balance, tip the scale a little bit, or finding a sense of neutrality with my food. So for example, if I'm having steak, I'm going to be making sure I have that avocado sauce. I'm also going to, for that cooling effect, maybe I'll add some mint in the avocado sauce. I'll have rice, which is just kind of a harmonizer. It's neutralizing, it's warming. Is it warming? Well, I'll get into this in a second, but the flavor of rice is sweet, and sweet foods help harmonize. And then I'll probably add some sauerkraut, because sauerkraut, like sour fermented things, help with digestion of fats. Another thing to consider is how you're cooking your food. As I mentioned before, if you're having it raw, it's going to have that cool and cold nature. If you are cooking your food in a broth, it's going to have more of a nourishing, tonifying nature, especially when you cook things slowly on low heat for a long amount of time. It enhances the strengthening, the tonifying. It enhances its properties, but especially in terms of tonifying. Or if you cook things in the oven, that's going to zap out the moisture. So for example, if you're struggling with constipation and you're always throwing your veggies or meats in the oven, then maybe you need to start cooking your foods in a broth instead and take a break from cooking in the oven. All right, so we have our yin yang, we have our temperatures. So these are things that we want to consider when deciding what foods we want to eat. And then I'm going to get into the 5-element theory to really just tie it all in and drive it home. So if you have a piece of paper in front of you, go ahead and at the top, we're going to kind of make a little circle of letters here. So at the top of the circle, we want fire. So write maybe fire or F. And then draw an arrow towards an E, which stands for earth. Then the arrow draws down towards metal. That's an M if you want to use a letter to represent it. And then we're going to move it to the other side of the circle. So right now we kind of passed 6 o'clock. We're around, so fire is at 12 o'clock. Earth would be around 3 o'clock. Metal is around 5. Water is around 7 o'clock on your 5-element watch here. So water, I write WA just to represent water. And then we have an arrow pointing to wood at about 10 o'clock. And then the arrow points to fire. So what you created here is called the generating sequence. So fire generates earth, which generates metal, which generates water, which generates wood, which generates fire. So let's start with fire. And I've spoke about this in my trapped emotions, just kind of discussing, because with 5-element theory, there's so many ways that you can apply this to your present state of being. You can attribute it to emotions, the sounds you've been making, the colors, the blah, blah, blah. So many things. But I'm going to stick with relating it towards food therapy. So the two organs that are related to the fire element are the heart and the small intestine. The season, because with our food therapy, we do want to apply it to the seasons to sort of acclimate ourselves to what's going on in the world around us and the environment around us. Because if you believe that we are disconnected from the earth and the seasons, then you got some things you got to work on here, because we are intrinsically connected. We are nature. We are earth energy, and earth energy is always going to be a part of us. So when it's summertime, to kind of help you prepare for summer, sometimes it's good to have bitter foods. Bitter foods have the nature of cooling and descending. The color would be red. This also has to do with blood. The heart in Chinese medicine is what churns the energy that we, the qi, the life force energy that we acquire from food in our stomach. It goes up to the lungs and then to the heart. So the heart then churns that, they call it gu qi, that food qi, that energy that you acquired from your food, into blood, and then sends it all through the body. This is in the Chinese medicine perspective. So yeah, the color is red. And for example, like tomatoes and beets are nice and tonifying for the blood. Some examples, though, of more bitter flavored foods are melon, parsley, dandelion, green tea. And in a Western perspective, they reduce inflammation. They reduce kind of like that energy of feeling restless. The heat is going to rise, like I mentioned with the hot air balloon. If you have a lot of heat going on, and if your basket's kind of like a light little basket, and picture that hot air balloon within your body, all that qi, that life force energy, is going to rise to your head. And it's not always good to have all that yang energy in your head. It can create headaches, it can create anxiety, it can create a sense of restlessness. And also, bitter foods can help with infections. Antibiotics are bitter. When I got an ear infection, my ear was radiating heat, fire. And I went to school and I got acupuncture, but I also got herbs. And these herbs kind of mixed. I didn't want to go on antibiotics because it kind of just wipes out your microbiome. And so I was prescribed really, really bitter herbs that have an antibiotic effect. All right, next element is earth. The organ is the spleen and the stomach. And this is going to relate more to kind of late summer or monsoon season. If you live in Florida like I do, you kind of get that we have a bit of it's either dry season in the winter, or the quote unquote winter, or a monsoon season in the summer and fall, or hurricane season. So it's really that damp energy. And the flavor for earth element is sweet. So sweet has the properties of nourishing fluids and kind of tonifying our whole qi and energy, but as well as harmonizing. When I'm talking about flavor, again, I'm really referring to the energy of the food. So rice. While rice, we don't typically think of it as something sweet. The energy of rice is sweet because it's extremely tonifying for the body and harmonizing. If you're making for example, in Chinese medicine, we do a lot of herb medicine. And if you're making a whole concoction of different types of herbs, you would add that have all these different temperatures and flavors. You would add a sweet natured herb in order to balance out and harmonize the concoction that you're making. Another flavor, though, that's really relevant to earth element. Oh, and the color is yellow. But another flavor is bland, really bland foods, kind of a typical thing that happens when we have too much sweet is kind of a sense of nausea, or like when you get that blood sugar spike and you feel that dampness, that muzziness. Well, bland food is really great because it kind of negates, or not negates, but it balances out that sweet energy and it drains dampness. So when I had COVID, one of my biggest symptoms was feeling really nauseous. And one of the sweetest women at my library at school, our librarian at school, she made me this. It was like, it was red bean and barley, and it was the blandest soup, but it was supposed to be bland. So she made it overnight, because when you let things sit overnight, it really enhances its tonifying properties. And so she made that for me, and it really helped with that sensation of feeling muzzy and damp. So some examples of sweet-natured foods would be rice, oats, oatmeal, yams, potatoes, yellow foods like yellow potatoes, yellow squash, kind of bringing in that earthy energy. And what's really great is these foods also ground you. All right. So we're moving on to the next element, metal. Metals, organs are the large intestine and the lung. It has to do with the season of autumn. The flavor is pungent, which the nature of it is descending and warming and stimulating, especially like for blood circulation. The color for pungent foods is white. Another word you could think of for pungent would be more your spicy foods. So chilies, but also things like onions and garlic. When you think of white, if you're looking for pungent foods that to help with your metal element, which a typical symptoms for the metal, think of lungs, think of chronic respiratory issues or skin issues, or because the lungs, they manifest in the skin, and or maybe respiratory congestion, allergies. And if you think about it in kind of a Western approach, garlic and onion are really well known. Maybe you know this, I don't know, but they're well known for helping fight respiratory infections and kind of moving that energy, dispersing all that congestion out. Another example of a pungent food would be like ginger. All right, moving on, let's look at water. So water's organs are the bladder and the kidneys. Its season is winter, and its flavor is salty. Salty energy is softening, so it like softening nodules as well as cooling, and it also moves energy inward. Think of winter, how when winter comes in, we start to stay inside. We want to wrap ourselves in blankets, and it's more less movement and more time to kind of turn inside of ourselves. Some examples of salty foods would be seaweed or like a miso soup. Actually, the reason why so many Asian, especially Japanese restaurants, they offer miso soup as a first course is because it is a broth, which is yin energy. It's going to create that nutrition, that nutritive substance to kind of kickstart your digestive system, but it's warm. The temperature of miso soup is more on the warming side. So it's beautiful for the stomach because it adds liquids to help with digestion. It is warming, so it helps kickstart your digestive system, but also it has that salty energy and flavor that's going to help any sort of food that's been stagnated from your last meal kind of descend and move it down so you have space. Right? Isn't that beautiful? And it has seaweed in it. It's just the perfect pre-dinner meal. Oh, and the color for most foods that will help with your water energy, your salty energy, are black foods. So black sesame seeds. And actually something I think is really relevant to a lot of us is hair loss. A lot of people have been talking to me about early onset hair loss. And the kidneys, they manifest in the hair on the head. What nourishes the hair on your head are black salty natured foods. Something that's been really, really helpful for me has been adding, although I'm not really struggling at all with hair loss, I actually got way too much hair. But something that I started adding to my diet just because kidney health in general is really great for your life force energy. I've mentioned this in other episodes, your dantian, which is your most potent well, your source of life force energy, is right around your kidneys. It's also kind of, if you want to Google Ming Men fire, it's kind of the source of our internal yang, but also the source of their vitality, our yin energy. So I would add black sesame to all my food, all my brothy foods, because you really want to kind of let the energy of the sesame seeds to really soak in. I would also cook up sesame with water and just let it sit and boil for a little bit and just add that black water to things. And of course, like everything, like I mentioned with sweet, there is the when you're out of balance, you're having way too many salty foods. And actually, because salty energy descends down towards our kidneys and our bladder, you can inundate with too much salt. You can inundate your kidney system and kind of overrun your kidneys and make them exhausted if you have too many salty foods. All right, our last element is wood. The organs for wood are the liver and the gallbladder. You could think of bile, and the season for the wood is spring. The color for wood is green. So this is why leafy greens are so helpful for your liver function, because their energy matches the liver, and so they just go straight to that organ. And the flavor for wood element is sour. So the energy of sour has this astringent effect. So rather than, so think about how salty descends down. Actually, salty foods kind of make us pee more because that energy is moving down. Astringent energy binds things, and it keeps us from losing too much water, or it can help with diarrhea. If you're having diarrhea, you don't really want salty foods. You want something that's, for the most part, every person's going to have a very unique pattern. I really recommend, if you're hearing this and it's really resonating, find a Chinese medicine doctor in your city. We're out there, I promise. Just look around, look up an acupuncturist, and you can find somebody that can really help you understand your unique pattern at the moment, because our patterns are ever changing. But yeah, so astringent and also like this binding nature. And I do want to take a moment really, really quick before I really dive more into wood, is just with water and temperature. We are so obsessed with ice and water, but that can actually create pain inside of your body and in your digestive system. Have you ever chugged a bunch of cold water and you feel your throat constrict, and you feel that constriction kind of move down into your intestines? So you might want to consider having kind of neutral temperature or warm temperatured water to, again, help with your digestion, especially before eating. Oh my God. Please do not drink iced water before eating food, no matter what energy you are. It's not helpful. But anyways, back to wood elements. So we've got that sour. So I think of fermented foods are on the sour side, adding vinegar to your food. Another example of these foods is pomegranate. Pomegranate is got that sour nature. It's great at stopping diarrhea, but also it's known for kind of binding flesh. So if you've got a gaping wound, apparently pomegranate is great for that. This is according to my research, not really personal experience. Lemon water. Lemon water can help with hot flashes and sweating, so it kind of binds your pores so that you're not excessively sweating. So with the 5-element theory, we've got, again, fire generating earth, and then you see all those arrows. What that means is they're all going to have an effect on each other. For example, if you're somebody who's really fiery and you've got a lot of that fire element in you, then check out your little diagram. We got fire point earth. So earth is actually going to be really great to counteract that fiery energy, that energy that's moving up and out. It's going to help ground you and center you. Another great example would be if someone's suffering from a liver pathology, which could be, think of sour, so binding, cramping. I was struggling with a lot of acid reflux. So I would feel a squeezing behind my heart that would move up my throat. So if you check out your chart, salty water energy is pointing an arrow to that wood sour energy. So what would have really helped me, and I didn't know this at the time, but would be salty natured foods, like having miso soup before a meal so that I wouldn't experience acid reflux, because of the nature of salty is to soften and move energy inwards and down. I hope that all made sense. I know that especially with this diagram here, it can get a little complicated, but really, I just, how amazing is it that our body and has this intelligence around these foods, energy of these foods, and these foods also carry this intelligence, and it's like somehow they know each other, and your body intuitively knows how to react with these energies and which organs to recruit and how to shift and adjust to find balance. And I believe with this shutdown of one's own intuition comes this inability to decipher what we need. I know I 110% experience that. And on the latter end, when we bring in our intuition back online, then all of a sudden our ability to choose what serves us becomes so much stronger and clearer. I do want to leave you just with this one last piece of information of food therapy in terms of Chinese medicine. I really, again, I recommend you find a practitioner to help you figure out your unique pattern. But something that you can do for yourself to kind of figure out what energy you're needing is to tap into your yin and yang energy. And I actually wrote a blog post about this that I will include in the show notes. But notice, is all your energy up in your head? Are you feeling fiery, excessive, and you want to find that cooling natured foods? Or are you feeling lethargic? Are you always cold, like you always need a sweater and you're always sleepy and tired? Then maybe you need some more food that has that yang, warming, heat energy. Another great thing that you can do is look at your tongue. Our internal organs, they manifest on the tongue. And I'm going to keep this really simple because tongue diagnosis does get complicated. But if you look at your tongue and everything is mostly red, and we're supposed to have like a thin white coat, and if that coat is peeled and you got a lot of cracks going on, that means that you need to start to tap into more yin natured foods, more nourishing foods, and figure out how to, that means you got a lot of not excess, but you got a lot of heat, whether it's excess or deficient in your body, and a deficiency of yin energy. On the other hand, if you're looking at your tongue and it's really pale and kind of a bluish color, and maybe you have like a thicker white coat and it's kind of flabby and wet looking, then that means you've got a little bit too much yin, or not, maybe a little bit or a lot of it, too much yin energy going on, and you need to start looking more into bringing more yang energy into your food or your diet, your life in general. Again, I'm being really simple. I don't recommend you diagnose yourself because this is a medicine that takes years and years to learn and understand. But I did want to leave you just like with a little piece that you can bring home with you. And now I hope you're pulling up your phone, opening the selfie camera and checking out your tongue here. Look up TCM tongue diagnosis. There are simplified diagrams that can really bring you insight into the current state of your body. Or of course, you can send me a picture of your tongue. I ask more people than not to send me photos of their tongue. So with my food journey, so that's going to be my conclusion of Chinese medicine theory. But with my food journey, it really started when I was kind of towards the end of high school and beginning of college. I did notice that certain foods would have me feeling more lethargic, or like having really intense cramping in my digestive system, to the point where pizza killed me. I remember I'd be hanging out with my friends and we'd all have a couple of slices of pizza, and then all of a sudden I am just in the grips of intense digestion issues and pain, and I feel like I can't move, I can't speak, I can barely breathe all the way in. And it created this sense of anxiety around my food. And I was noticing, okay, so it's red meat, gluten, cheese, anything dairy, sugar, anything that was just kind of quote unquote unhealthy. So I started having more whole foods or homemade foods. I started cooking a lot when I was in college because I just felt so sick and anxious around my food. And I remember that just became a piece of my identity. Oh, I can't have that food because I react, because I'm sensitive. Saying I can't was actually a huge thing that I needed to change, because words have power. If you listen to episode, I think it was episode 2, where I spoke with Jack, he talks about how words are spells and your body is always listening. So if you lead the way with, oh, I can't have this, I can't have that, then it's like, if you believe it, then you're right. Your body will prove you right. So instead, what I say is, oh no, I don't eat blank right now. Or just a simple, no thank you, I prefer blank instead. Another thing that kind of started to happen was almost like I started, when I did more research and I learned more about why these foods weren't helping me, I kind of created a little bit of a hierarchy around diets. And in hindsight, I probably did need to do that somewhat restrictive vegan cleanse vibe sort of diet, because I needed to reset my system in order to regain balance. But it was not a sustainable diet to become a lifestyle or, of course, an identity. But almost as if to make myself feel better about missing out on so many things because they quote unquote made me sick, I started believing that I was better than others because I wouldn't have dairy or I wouldn't have certain processed foods. And they would, because I knew better and I felt lighter, or I was trying to feel lighter. But really that mindset is bullshit. Eventually what happened was all the foods were starting to affect me. I was having reactions acid reflux started to become a thing. I started having reactions to all the foods I ate, whether it was a healthy salad or like any homemade. I really do adore cooking and creating homemade things. But it felt like everything I ate was making me react. Any alcohol I drank, I would react. And again, it became a piece of my identity. I would have anxiety going out to restaurants if I didn't know what was on the menu. I would have anxiety if I was hanging out with friends and they were drinking, or it was with my family, they were drinking. And I'm like, no, I can't. No, I can't. I can't. I can't. I can't. And it wasn't until summer 2020 that I had it. So I started getting acupuncture, but also I started really releasing it was kind of the beginning of releasing a lot of trapped emotions, particularly the emotion of anger. Actually, if you think about the wood element with all that cramping and all that squeezing that I was feeling, I was mostly vegan. So I was having a lot of cold-natured foods, which was not helping my case. And I really craved sour foods, which cravings, it's interesting because sometimes cravings are true and we need to honor that. But sometimes cravings, they can trick you and lead you astray. For example, I know how I can get is when I have a little bit of refined sugar, then I start craving it more and more and more in my diet, or I want to add more honey to things. And it's not because I need more sweet-natured foods in my life. It's more that I've kind of become addicted to that dopamine hit or desensitized from having sugar. Sugar's got this unique ability to just burn off my taste buds. Or I was craving sour, but then I was just contributing to my internal digestive cramping and acid reflux. And so before I ate every freaking meal on my plate, I would have a moment of like, oh God, is this going to hurt me? Is this healthy enough? Is this pure enough for this freaking stupidly precious temple of mine? Oh, this is going to make me sick every time I ate. And I mentioned this in my Trapped Emotions episode. One day I was listening to a podcast with Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he mentioned me. He said, you know, those people that do everything right. They eat well, they sleep well, they exercise, they're always aware of their nutrition, yet they're always so sensitive. And they're like, why am I always reacting? Well, the better question is, when are you done reacting? And from that moment, actually, it took a little bit because I felt personally attacked by that statement. But once I allowed that statement to empower me, I realized that the energy I was giving to my food was believing that it was going to hurt me and make me sick, and that it wasn't healthy enough, and I wasn't doing enough, and I wasn't enough, and I wasn't worthy. And of course, I do one day I really want to dive into the topic of the spirituality, the whispers around body image. But I was so inflamed. Even though I ate so healthy, I felt like I just always looked bloated. And actually, kind of when it comes to food and digestion, typical two patterns that we experience in modern day culture are one, stomach yin deficiency, so not having enough fluids in our stomach to help with digestion. And something that's really interesting is when we eat and we are watching something or kind of working while we eat, that drains your yin energy. So that can actually be something that might be contributing to any digestive upset you're experiencing. So when I eat, I really try to sit in silence and just be present with my food. But also sometimes life happens and you got to study and get your work done while you're eating. So, nobody's perfect. But another typical pattern is spleen qi deficiency. And worry really, really consumes your spleen qi, and it makes it more difficult because the spleen is really the spleen and stomach, they both send food up to create blood. But that chronic bloating, exhaustion, kind of feeling like you don't really have an appetite and you feel just heavy even though you try your best to be really good with your food, that's spleen qi deficiency was something I really, really struggled with. And really the two main foods that are going to contribute to spleen qi deficiency are salads. Having salads all the time, it's not going to help your case because it's raw and it's cold. So, and I've talked about, I hope by now you can kind of reel into why cold and raw isn't the best for your digestion, but also smoothies, again, ice cold, and mostly we use raw fruits and veggies in our smoothies. That's just going to, it not always, again, we're all different, but that could be a major contributing factor to your struggle with digestion. So this kind of, I'm trying to segue more into my energetic relationship with food. As I mentioned before, I was just in the constant belief that I was unwell and my food was making me unwell, and I was just afraid. I was just afraid to eat. And so I really had to start to tap in to myself when I sat and ate with my food. I had to check my mind. I had to move myself out of that fight or flight sympathetic state mode and move myself into a parasympathetic, a rest and digest mode. So at first it started with kind of like having deep breaths and just saying, I am safe, I am healing, I am healed. But then it really wasn't until I was in Costa Rica last summer and I had this sort of waking vision. I was in meditation and this whole kind of story played out in front of my eyes. Not in front of my eyes, with my eyes closed while I was in meditation. That really started to shift everything. So now is time for the story. I love sharing these visions because they're just so out of it and wild, and I love it. And I do want to make, say that when it comes to getting these visions, it very well could be me in a past life. It very well could be me on another dimension, or it very well could just be a story that my mind created or my guides sent to me to help me draw the conclusion. With a lot of spiritual things, Really what's most important is the lesson. It's not whether it happened or it didn't. It's the emotions that come up and the lessons that come with it. And I also do want to say sometimes I kind of refer to myself as third person, because in these past life regressions, yeah, I'm my soul, but I am someone else. And actually, if you listen to my what happened was it felt like a past life regression, because I was in a form of me in a past life. And if you listen to my podcast in past lives, then you will recognize kind of the energy and the story I was the kind of like the indigenous South Central American man who eventually became a shaman and an energy worker in his tribe. So as him, Stephanie's in Costa Rica on this deck in the middle. The place I was staying had this little yoga deck in the middle of the jungle, and there was just nobody else there. So I did a little bit of yoga, and then I laid down to meditate. Ooh, I wonder if you heard that thunder. We're getting quite the storm here, which is exciting. I love summer storms. All right. So after my yoga, I lay down to meditate, and then all of a sudden I return, as I usually do when I return to this life. I return to this memory that's not a memory of walking through the jungle. So I'm stepping. I feel dead leaves under my feet. I'm stepping high to crush fallen branches, and I'm with someone. I see the face of a man, but I feel the energy of my older sister, Nicole. In this life as this man, he's my friend and neighbor, and he's a hunter for our community. He's prepared for a hunt, and he's very angry, and I feel his anger. Ooh. I hope you heard that. All right, that thunder. Anyway, so I'm feeling so much anger coming off of him as he's just walking with purpose, and he's deeply disturbed, and I am too. But I am not prepared to hunt, nor am I angry. I'm more concerned, and I'm feeling anxious for what's to come. While I'm watching this, Stephanie kind of steps in and just asks, what's going on? What are we doing? And the shaman, he tells me this shaman past life. This hunter man, who's the energy of my older sister, a couple of words came to me when I was in this vision, and the language, when I looked up these words, the language was I might butcher this, but the Nahuatl language, the language of the Aztecs. And one of the words that came to me was apistli. Apistli? I'm so sorry if anyone who is Aztec lineage and they're like, what is this girl saying? Apistli, which means hunger. So I'm going to refer to the man who has the energy of my sister Nicole, who's really angry, as Apistli. So my past life man tells me that Apistli wants vengeance, and I ask on who, and he says the jaguar. He wants to kill the jaguar because he believed he killed his wife. But something strong within my soul tells me that the jaguar isn't the bad guy here, isn't the one who did what we think has happened. And I warn Apistli that this isn't right. And also, apparently in this life, the jaguar is the keeper of the soul of the jungle. So setting out to murder the jaguar is not right to the balance in the way of peace and balance within the jungle. Then the vision brings me to this image of the brutal murder of Apistli's wife. It's graphic, and this is a trigger warning. It is graphic, so if you don't think you can handle it, just skip ahead. But she was just ravaged in the worst ways. So what I see is kind of like the image of what looks like a man, or sort of a dark masculine energy that is dressed in jaguar skin, almost as if he's disguised as the jaguar. And he uses the paws of this jaguar skin coat to slash the skin, face, throat, the belly of this poor woman, and her insides were just opened and slightly pulled out. And this entity also took a few bites of her flesh and spit it out and kind of just left her in her home for Apicely to come and find. So after the vision, me as this shamanic man, I placed my hands on Apicely's shoulders and explained to him it wasn't the jaguar, because jaguars do not kill in this way. A jaguar wouldn't have wasted its kill. Plus, jaguars, they drag their kill up a tree. So Apicely, he knows what I'm saying, and he just breaks down sobbing, and it's just brutal and heartbreaking to witness. So I just sit there and hold him, and he agrees with me, but he says none of this makes sense, and he starts to calm down, and he gets up and asks for my help, and I know exactly what to do. So we walk deeper into the jungle to a large jaguar shrine. And I ask Apicely to watch my body, and I sit down and I astral project. So now, to confuse you even more, I am no longer this man. I take on this form that I've taken on as Stephanie. I've seen before in dreams and healings, and also when I astral project often. It's kind of like, it looks like a woman. It's interesting. It kind of looks like a woman, but kind of has the upper body of like a jaguar. And it's almost like a hologram. Like if you look at it from a different angle, it's kind of a jaguar or a woman or both. I don't know. I can't understand why things in different dimensions kind of work in this holographic way, but that's what I see. So, and she's also kind of just got this like warrior energy. When I'm doing removals, or if I'm afraid, when I feel this interdimensional version of me come in, I really instantly feel peace and kind of knowing what is needed of me. It's amazing. I love her. So as this woman, I demand for the spirit of the jungle to come forth. And I feel myself being really loud and firm, taking on this warrior woman energy. And the spirit of the jungle emerges. It's the jaguar. And it replies with a tone of insult, kind of saying like, how dare you? Who do you think you are? Who's calling upon me? And being indignant about it. And so I step forward, feeling strong and sure. I say, I do. Come closer, spirit. And I could sense that the spirit, as it leaned closer towards me and I leaned my energy towards it, I could sense it was corrupted. So I said that the senseless, brutal murder of Apicely's wife was wrong and against the way. And I kind of went on and just said, it's not up to form destiny and to defy the laws of source in the way that the jaguar did. But then the spirit showed me something really interesting. It was Apicely and his wife. They were taking more than they should from the jungle. They were gathering more than they needed in this sort of rushed, unceremonious, disconnected way. And they were skipping on a lot of sacred rituals of honoring their kill and not taking the time to sort of, what I was shown, open a portal for the dead creature's soul to pass on. It showed me that this happened with a boar that Apicely had killed. What happened, he didn't do this ceremony. He was very unceremonious about it. And this boar's soul struggled to return to source, and there was no portal provided for this soul. So it remained sort of within this kind of plane, and it was confused and afraid because it no longer had this physical body, but it no longer was returning to the all-knowing, all-loving source. And this confusion and fear eventually started to corrupt the jungle. And the more kills he did, the more corruption started to take place. And if you are familiar with kind of my perspective on entities, you could jump to the conclusion that this almost like these lost souls created little cells of trapped low vibrational emotions that entities that match that vibration started to infiltrate and to feed off of. So seeing this vision the spirit showed me, I understood what was going on. While it didn't justify what was done, I could see that there was a state of unbalance here. So, Jaguar woman kind of just like that piece of my soul just kind of did this little thing that just kind of brought this spirit down to its knees. And then I just pulled it in, the energy of it in, and I almost, again, changed form. I transmuted myself to this higher dimensional form. Almost I was formless, and I was just taking on this energy of unconditional love. And I pull this entity in, and I emit just love and healing and source frequency and compassion and understanding. I could feel this entity sort of dissolve and disperse back to source. And I feel the spirit of the jungle purify and return to its form. And then I wake up from this wild and wonderful, crazy vision. So what does this all mean? Well, when I have visions, when I try to make sense of it, I really tune into what was the image, the scene that kind of induced the most emotions within me. And it was the gory image of Peasley's wife. I remember just looking at it and being like, why am I seeing this? And I'm sure you were listening to my description thinking, why is she going into this? Well, that's where the lesson is. So when I thought about it, it turned my mind to the gruesome images that I've watched when I watched documentaries on the food industry. And it had me thinking about the brutality that we allow these poor animal souls to live and die within, and how we justify it or we choose to look the other way. And as a disclaimer, I eat meat. Like, I actually feel very good having meat, but what I really work on is not turning away from the suffering. Well, I do my best to not have, with my produce, with my meat, to find things that are quote unquote ethically sourced, that are least chemicals. With my eggs, I want the chickens. Oh my gosh, we buy these eggs that comes with a little magazine update of the chickens. And like, who was the best egg layer of the month? Like, it's a good place where they hopefully, you never know. Maybe I should visit it. I don't know, but I think you're getting the gist here. And like, I work on having humanely raised organic meat in my life. And then also what I do when I sit with my food is I acknowledge the suffering. I acknowledge the fact that this animal unwillingly gave its life so that I could ingest its nourishment. And then I also thought about the rushing way and the kind of the service to self, hurried, anxious way that Peasley and his wife were collecting food from the jungle, this unceremonious thing that they were doing, this kind of tilting of the scales of balance. And I thought about how, like, with COVID, how we all kind of freaked out and ran to the store, but also just how the food industry in general is all about me. What can I take? How much can I get out of it? Many resources, or what can I get out of this, rather than how can I create balance within this plane that I live in? And so it's had me really thinking about that too, and on what I put on my plate. I think about how to honor the seasons and how to eat seasonally, so that I'm not eating foods that are genetically modified so that they can be grown within the wrong season. I also think about things like almond milk and almond butter and honey, how we're there's things that are that these techniques that these beehive keepers are doing to the bees. Bees are supposed to have a period of rest. They also have their own seasons, and beekeepers are having to push the bees to no longer rest so that they can pollinize all these agricultural items such as almonds, but also so they can create honey. So it's not that I've cut these foods out. I just try to limit my intake of it. I like to be mindful of the suffering behind it. And so with being mindful of all this suffering, though, when I have my food or my tea or whatever it is in front of me on my plate, in my cup, this is my moment to transmute. And I'm not trying to spiritually bypass suffering. What I'm trying to say is I'm not going to put things in my body that do not align and resonate deeply with my center, with my soul. And if there is any sort of energy that I'm feeling off of my food that doesn't feel great, either one, I don't eat it because I don't want to do that to myself anymore. I don't want to eat things that don't feel in alignment, or I sit with it. I acknowledge the suffering, and then I work to transmute the suffering. I bring myself to that parasympathetic state. I relax my body down. I tune in, and then I tune in with the energy on my plate, and I align myself either with love or appreciation. I thank Pachamama or Gaia, that Mother Earth energy, because we are all her children. Oh, I wish I had the time to tell you the story that I was given from my guides of Mother Earth. It's so beautiful, but I don't have the time right now. I'm sorry. Somebody remind me so that I can talk to you about it at some point. But we are all her children. And when I say we, I'm talking about the livestock we eat, the fish, the agriculture, like the mushroom, the beet, the spinach, the us. We are all her children, and it's so interesting how we are all sacrificing each other for the survival of ourselves. Well, really, we are sacrificing agriculture and livestock for our human survival. But she loves us all equally. So I try to tune into that Mother Earth energy, and I thank her. I thank her for giving her children to me on my plate. Is that weird? I think that sounds a little weird, but nonetheless, it's what I do. I thank her children. I thank Mother for providing, and I think about the life of that chicken that I'm eating, from a little egg to a chicken to its slaughter. And I promise the energy of this creature, that it will not die in vain, because I will use the energy that it's giving me to help the energy of the earth rise, to help the collective consciousness rise, by doing my best as humanly possible, to be a good Stephanie, to be a good soul, to raise collective consciousness. And that is something that I do repeat a lot when I tune in with my food, is together we rise, together we rise. So that is really everything I've had to share. I think I did a pretty good job. I hope you think so too. I hope I didn't confuse too many of you. It really is such a massive topic. If you want to read the blog posts that I kind of go a little bit deeper into things that I wrote about how food can corrupt or raise your vibration, go head out to schoolofwhispers.com. If you want to work with me, energy healing or readings, go out and head to schoolofwhispers.com. My social media is in the show notes. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. And thank you for all who helped vote so that it can help me figure out what topic I'm supposed to be doing. I'm heading out on vacation to Italy and for 2 weeks with my family. It's going to be a wild ride. And so I really just wanted to get on top of things. So I really appreciate you all just kind of responding back and helping me on this journey. All right. I really, really hope that your perspective on food may have shifted and maybe you learned something new. If you feel like I could have done a better job, send me the feedback. If you feel like you need a little bit more explanation, you want to talk, this is the shit I love. So I'm so happy to talk to you about this. I'm not a practitioner yet. So, you don't have to pay me here. Maybe that'll send a couple of you running towards me to talk about this. But the more that we can really understand the nature of food, the more we can help, again, collective consciousness rise, because it's really the whole goal of being here, rising together. All right. I love you guys. I'll be tuning in and feeling your energy next week.